რემონტი გააკეთეს. ეს არჩევნების
რემონტი როგორი
დანგრეული იყო.
როდეს იყო
გუში გაუხსნიათ და ეს არის აშენებული დიდი.
To me, Georgia is very much, or Tbilisi specifically, is sort of walking in the mists of memory. Every time I'm here, I see things, I remember things. I used to come here a lot with my sister and my father and my mother when I was a child. So, and I spent a lot of time here in the summers. I was also a pioneer in the Bamaki. And my father, back in Sweden, he would read the newspaper every day, and if he heard about any Georgians coming to Sweden, he would go to the airport and he would stand there and he would meet them.
ისე ნატურას რო არჩევდით ფილმისთვის და ჩვენ ვიცეკვებთ. აი შენი ბავშვობის რაღაც მოგონებები
ფილმში
ხო გინდოდა რომ ის ნატურა ყოფილიყო?
კი, წნეთი რომ არის სცენები, that was from my childhood. And also they are here outside there in the film. იქ არის ამ ფილმში ერთი სცენა არის.
რა უნდა კითხო, ეს არ არის კაი მოგონება შენთვის? ეს ადგილი.
სტუდია არ არის. For me, no. I mean, I actually haven't been here since. I wasn't here when there were demonstrations either. მე არ ყოფილი ვარ.
მაგრამ ხო ნახე მე
I saw it on like internet. Of course. Yes, I was worried. Of course, I didn't want anybody to get hurt over a film. I thought it was ridiculous. But yeah.
მაგრამ რეკლამაცია იყო. ფილმის. არა.
You know what? Not well.
არ გინდა ეგეთი რეკლამა.
No, I don't. And also, I think that I really wanted the film to be able to be screened in Georgia. So when we weren't able to screen the film, it made me sad actually, and also, I think that if they actually saw the film, I don't think that they would, scream as much.
დაახლოებით 1 საათია უწყოდ რეჟიმში გთავაზობ და პირდაპირ ეთერში ხეძემოდან კინოთეატრ ამირანის მუნიციპალურ ტერიტორიაზე კოსტავაზე, სადაც შეკრებილები არიან ქართული მარშის წევრები და აპროტესტებენ ფილმის საპრემიერო ჩვენებას და ჩვენ ვიცეკვეთ. բայց წესით უნდა დააწყებულიყო უკვე, იმიტომ რომ ოფიციალურად ვის ნახევარზე იყო დაანონსებული ფილმი კინოთეატრ ამირანში, დანარჩენ კინოთეატრებში დაახლოებით 19:45 წუთზე. რამდენჯერმე სცადეს აქციის მონაწილეებმა პოლიციის კორდონის გარღვევა, ამიტომ გახდა საჭირო დამატებით ძალების მობილიზება და თქვენ ახლა კაცი ხედავთ სპეცრაზმის რაზმს, რომელიც წინ ფარებით დგას და არ აძლევს საშუალებას ქართული მარშის წევრებს რომ ჩაშალონ ფილმის ჩვენება.
ლევან აკინი ქალაქის რეჟისორია. მისი ორი ფილმი მაქვს ნანახი და ჩვენ ვიცეკვებთ და გზაჯვარედინი. ორივე გამახსოვრდება შესანიშნავი მსახიობებით, მოულოდნელად განვითარებული სიუჟეტით, ცოცხალი დიალოგებით, მაგრამ მაინც ვგონია, რომ მთავარი აკინის ფილმებში ქალაქის ატმოსფეროა. კამერის სიყვარულით სავსე მზერა, რომელიც მაშინაც კი არ იცვლება, როცა ლევან აკინის გმირებს სასტიკ რეალობასთან, შეუწყნარებლობასთან, განსხვავებულის მიუღებლობასთან უხდებათ დაპირისპირება.
საყვარლის საფლავს ვეძებდი. იმღერე. არ მინდა.
მაინც არ მიგვირს. ქართველი ემიგრანტების შვილისთვის თბილისი და სტამბოლი უდარდელი ბავშვობის სახეა. Ახლაც, როდესაც ინტერვიუს გადასაღებად შევხვდი, შევამჩნიე, როგორი ინტერესით ათვალიერებდა გარემოს. როგორ ყვებოდა თბილისის ქუჩებზე, სახლებზე, ეზოებზე, რომლებიც ზეპირად იცოდა. შენ ფილმებში ძალიან გიყვარს ატმოსფერო, ქალაქი, სტამბოლი, თბილისი, ასე შემდეგ და ხო, საჭმელი სიმღერა. როგორ ეძებდით ამ ნატურას? ეს მართლა მაინტერესებს, რომ აი თბილისი ყოფილიყო, დიდი დრო დაგჭირდა ამისთვის. შეგვიძლია ინგლისურად.
So when I was, to me, Georgia is very much, or Tbilisi specifically, is, sort of walking in the mists of memory. Every time I'm here, I see things, I remember things. I used to come here a lot with my sister and my father and my mother when I was a child. So, and I spent a lot of time here in the summers. I was also a pioneer in the Banaki one summer.
Which is წნეთში დადიოდი. წნეთში, ხო?
Tbilisi holds a very special place in my heart. And I think for me with my films it's important to I want to capture spaces and places and rooms that that feel very specific. That's important to me. And
რაღაცა კრიტიკა შენიშნა იყო ის, რომ და ამაზე როგორ უპასუხებ, მაინტერესებს, რომ ეგზოტიზაცია არისო თითქოსო თბილისის და მერე უკვე სტამბოლის და ეთანხმები ამას?
I don't think so. I mean, not if you ask me, but I mean, I think to me it's about I'm trying to sort of distill the essence of a place, how I experience it through me. And perhaps that's exotifying to some people, but I also think that's a lazy argument. I mean, it's a lazy criticism because I think to me, I'm sort of like a person that's homeless, right? I don't really belong anywhere, I feel, and I just, come into places and I capture what I see. And again, I try to sort of it's subjective, it goes through me. So the Tbilisi that you see in the film is the Tbilisi that I experience when I'm here. Or the Istanbul, in the crossing is the Istanbul that I experience. Also, I think that I show places in my films that people don't usually show in films from Georgia or Turkey. I mean, those streets in Istanbul or those people, those women that we see in Crossing, we haven't really seen them in a film. So I can't really see how that is exotifying.
მაგრამ ეს ორი სრულიად სხვადასხვანაირი ქალაქია, სხვადასხვა.
ძალიან სხვანაირი ქალაქი.
ვთვლი რომ ორივე შენშია.
Yeah, they are in different ways. Yeah.
ხალხიც
in different ways. It's complicated for me. It's actually very complicated. It's complicated to talk about. I mean, Georgia, through my father, who was sort of a Georgian patriot, holds a very special place. We were as kids, me, my sister, we were always watching Georgian old films at home on VHS. Like everything from like Bashiachuki to like and then we used to come here in the summers. So I've always been drawn to Georgia, but it's a complicated relationship, of course.
და ადვილად ჩამოდიოდა საბჭოთა კავშირის დროსაც ჩამოდიოდა აქ, ხო, მამა და ჩამოდიოდით აქ.
Yeah, we were here in the Soviet periods. Me too.
ხო, არ ქონდა პრობლემა ჩამოსვლის.
იმიტომ პრობლემა არ იყო. It was like this. So my parents, both of them, were born by the Black Sea in Turkey. Their parents were Georgian. They moved to Sweden when they were very young. My mom moved to Sweden when she was like 15. And in Sweden, my mom was part of like a balalaika group.
Oh, exactly.
And this balalaika group arranged like trips to Georgia. So they were like cooperating with a balalaika group in Georgia. So the first time my mother and father came to Tbilisi was in the mid-70s. So they had never been here before. They had like distant relatives and things like that, but they had never been here. So they had only heard stories about Georgia. So the first time they came here was in the mid-70s. And then I think through Inturist, they had like a person who was with them all the time. So they weren't allowed to be like alone and do whatever they want. There was always somebody around them, which became close friends of my parents. But I mean, for me as a child when I was here, I didn't know a child doesn't know about communism or social, I didn't know anything about that. So my experience was, of course, very different from the people that lived here during Soviet times. Because I was just a kid.
და შვედეთი როგორ არჩიეს?
შვედეთი იმიტომ ჩემი მამა სასტუმროში მუშაობდა. He was working in a hotel in Istanbul, and he met a Swedish girl. that he fell in love with, or like they had like a thing, and she invited him to Sweden. So he went to Sweden and he was like together with her. This was in 1963, so it was a long time ago. And then he lived in Sweden for a while, and then when he was like typical Georgian, because when it was time to get married, he was like, I need a Georgian wife. So then he remembered my mom, because my mom was friends with his sister in this town in Turkey. So he was like, oh, she was a beautiful woman, like I'm gonna ask for her hand. So that's how my mom also came to Sweden.
ხო, ტემპერამენტი ყველაფერი განსხვავებიანია შვედეთში, ხო? და
როგორ მაგრამ Sweden has some crazy people too.
ხო, და ეს სხვა შორის ფიქრობდი, რომ ეს ქსენოფობიის თემა, რომელიც არის შენს ფილმებშიც, ხო? აქ კიდე შვედეთში კიდე აი ამ ემიგრაციის, ემიგრანტების და შავი ხალხის მიუღებლობა. ეს პრობლემა კიდევ არსებობს.
კი, ახლა it's more because our government it's become very far right government. It's not the social democrats anymore. It's the other side. And we can see this in our politics very clearly, also in arts funding, how they're starting to control the arts. For instance, my film, Crossing, everybody thought that Sweden was going to send it as the Oscar submission, but they sent like a Swedish film that nobody knows about because it's in Swedish. They didn't want to send this movie because they see it as, it wasn't Swedish enough. So my films have become homeless somehow. It feels like nobody takes ownership of them.
მაგრამ კინოთეატრებში რო გადიოდა წარმატებული იყო შვედეთში ხო?
I mean, the film has been successful. It's been released in almost 50 countries cinematically. So it's done very well, very well. Actually, it's sold to more countries even than we danced. So it's done very well.
ეხლა ალბათ უფრო გაგიჭირდება მაშინ თუ ახალი მთავრობა არის დაფინანსების შონა, ხო?
კი, ახლა it's easier every time you make a film. If the last film does well, then it's easier to get financing for your new film. And I can still get financing from Sweden. Yes, I can.
ხო, ეგ მაინტერესებდა თურქეთში თუ გავა ფილმი?
კი, გავა.
ანუ პრობლემები იქ არ
არისო, მაგრამ I could feel, I mean, there's a lot of transphobia in Turkey for sure. Even in circles you would expect there not to be. I felt like there was a lot of transphobia. But no, it did, I mean, it feels like the distribution of the film in Turkey, they sort of like didn't make such a big deal out of it because I think they were a little afraid of the response.
გამოდის რომ ცენზურა თურქეთში ნაკლებია ვიდრე აქ.
I don't know if it's I think it feels worse here for trans people than actually even in Turkey, I would say, unfortunately.
Ну, აქ ნიშნულოვანია კიდე არა მარტო საზოგადოების, არამედ ხელისუფლების თავრობა როგორ იქცევა, თავრობის დისკურსში თუ არის ტრანსფობია.
Yes, I would say so. 100%. Yeah.
მაგრამ გადაღების დროს პრობლემა არ შექმნა.
არ იყო პრობლემა.
არა.
იმიტომ ისტანბული ძალიან დიდი ქალაქია.
ხო, აი ეგ არის.
Yeah, there's so many people, ბევრი ხალხი. People don't have time. They didn't know what we were doing. We were left alone actually. Tbilisi is smaller. People are talking, people know. But in Istanbul I think it was quite nice. We had a good shoot. It was a nice shoot. We had fun.
ხო, მაგრამ რამდენადაც ვიცი, საკმაოდ საიდუმლოდ. ანუ ინფორმაცია არ ვრცელდებოდა.
It was actually. We were very discreet.
გეშინოდათ?
მე არ გეშინოდა, მაგრამ ჩემი პროდიუსერები, they just want to be extra careful. იმიტომ, we for everybody it's better to be careful. But
და მე მიანიჭეს პოლიტიკური მნიშვნელობაც აქ უკვე არჩევნებში, რომ ხაზარაძემ დააფინანსა.
She
მედიამ ასე გააშუქა სახელმწიფო.
But that's just I mean, it's ridiculous, actually. I mean, we first of all, neither me or my producer had any idea of her father's connection to politics, and also we just simply needed a producer, and she's a producer, and she's not financing the film or anything. She didn't bring in any financing. She literally just helped us produce the film together with Nino Chichua. So there is, it's ridiculous actually, what the stories they make up.
რადგან ესე კარგად ვზივართ, მაინც მინდა რომ მომიყვე უფრო დეტალურად შენს აქ კონტაქტებზე ბავშვობიდან თბილისთან. თუ რა გახსოვს, აი როდის ჩამოხვედით?
I came here very early. I mean, 1 year old, 2 year old. I was here every summer, and my father, back in Sweden, he would read the newspaper every day, and if he heard about any Georgians coming to Sweden, he would go to the airport and he would stand there and he would meet them. So we had always like Georgians living in our house, and even when Georgians were going to Sweden from here, even the sort of like intourist here would say like, oh, if you're going to Sweden, you have to contact Shalva Tevzadze, Stockholmshi, So there was like a very big connection between, Sweden and Georgians going to Sweden. But so we were very close friends. For instance, there is a great choreographer and dancer called Zurabi Kikalaishvili. And he and his family lived in Stockholm for a while. And we became like Natesavi, and we were very close. So we would spend a lot of time with them here in Georgia. And then also my uncle, my father's brother, studied here to become a doctor in Tbilisi. So he married a woman called Mzia from Kakheti, from Gremi. So I have cousins from here and things like that. So yeah, my father started the Çveneburi movement in Turkey. So Çveneburi, together with Ahmet Melashvili, it was a magazine that they started, and it was to unite sort of the Georgians in Turkey. There was over 1 million Georgians in Turkey, Çveneburi, so-called Çveneburi, and this magazine sort of united a lot of people. And my mom and my father used to spend like all their money printing these magazines and sending them to Turkey. And so we ate like only potato when I was a kid because we didn't have money. They were just paying the money on it. But sadly, Ahmet Melashvili, he was shot to death by the Grey Wolves in Turkey, the sort of fascist movement. They killed him because of this magazine, because that was a time in the 80s, in the late 70s and he died in the 80s when everything that was considered left-wing, everything that was considered not nationalist was very, very, they imprisoned so many people in Turkey in those years, because they tried to sort of quench all of the left-wing movements and Çveneburi and, the Kurdish people, Kurdibi, Armenians, all of that. So that was a very bad time in Turkey.
შენ თვითონ თუ გრძნობდივი აი ბავშვობაში რომ ემიგრანტი ხარ და ურთიერთობაში თვითონ ან შენ კარიერაზე თუ იმოქმედა არ ვიცი რომ შავი ბიჭი მივიდა იქ სადღაც სამუშაოთან სასწავლებლად შვედეთში ვამბობ.
I mean, Sweden is in many ways similar to Georgia, a very homogeneous country, and if you have dark hair and you look like me, you're always like it's always going to be like, oh, where are you actually from, or like, what's your origin? And there's a lot of like sort of casual racism still, I would say, in Sweden. I think like Europe, especially Northern Europe, is quite tricky in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I've always had a sense of being an outsider in many ways, culturally, but also, so yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, I think, ironically, I feel most at home when I'm in New York, because there nobody asks me where I'm from, and I'm like, I'm just like part of the group of people. It's a much more multicultural space. But if I'm in Sweden, or if I'm here, or if I'm, then it's always like, oh, yeah, he's Georgian, but not really, or like he's Swedish, but not really. So, I think that's a part of the stories that I tell. It's my stories are often about people who go from one place to another, or, can't fit in, like in And Then We Danced, And Then We Danced is about a boy who desperately wants to love his culture, to love his tradition, but he's not allowed to because he's different. So I think that theme is something that is very close to me.
კარიერაზე ამას არ უმოქმედია დასაწყისში?
I think in the beginning of my career, I started off working for Roy Andersson, the Swedish director.
ხარ მოწაფე ანდერსონის?
კი.
თვლი რომ ხარ მოწაფე?
Yeah, well, I mean...
მოი ცოტა სხვა ესთეტიკაა.
Yeah, ძალიან სხვა ესთეტიკა. მაგრამ იმის პირველი ფილმი, Swedish Love Story. I think that aesthetic is more similar to mine. It's more neo-realist. But I worked on You the Living, which is a later film. But so I worked there in my 20s, and then I started doing TV in Sweden, TV shows. So I never really did like very personal things, and then I started making my own movies. I think I was sort of trying to find my stories and trying to, maybe in a way I was making movies for like a Swedish audience somehow. I was trying to fit in, I think, maybe. It wasn't until later when I did And Then We Danced that I sort of started making my own films, or maybe I found my own voice as a director. To be honest, perfectly honest, it wasn't that hard. I think what was more hard for me was just, finding my own place as a director artistically, but not from a place of being sort of a second generation immigrant. I didn't experience it in that way, actually.
ფაქტია რომ ეს თემა არატოლერანტობის, ქსენოფობიის, შეუწყნარებლობის, შენი ფილმების თემა არის, ეს გაწოხებს.
I mean, of course, I've experienced xenophobia. Of course, I've experienced, being an outsider and all of those things that we just spoke about. But when you grow up as a queer person in a society or in a culture that's not accepting of you, it's not just about xenophobia, it's also about other aspects. I think you always look at things differently, and you always have to sort of reevaluate. I mean, there's a scene in And Then We Danced, which to me is one of the more like sort of personal scenes, but when he is at this wedding of his brother and everybody's happy, because his brother is getting married, but he's heartbroken and he's really sad, but he can't express that because he was in love with a boy. So those types of experience are things that I want to explore. It's so, I think, deeply sad that he can't talk about it with anyone, because, if he had been in love with a girl, he could have said, oh, I'm just really sad because my girlfriend dumped me, and he could have been open about it. But so it's like those types of sort of spaces that I don't think have fully been explored in especially cinema from our part of the world, Georgia, Turkey, or this Eastern. I haven't really seen those, and I feel I think that was an aha moment for me when I was like, wait a minute. Since I am from Sweden and I can get funding to make films, maybe I can make films, that make a difference, or that people, about stories that I wanted to see when I was young. I wanted to see these stories. I missed that type of representation. So yeah, I'm very happy that I was able to do that.
მე შენ მოწმა მიცის პიდარასტი. შენ მოგიტყნა, მოდი აქ შეთხესა.
ქართული ცეკვა ვაჟკაცობაზეა დაფუძნებული. სისუსტის ადგილი არა.
Gogi, how did you fall in love with cinema? Like, what was your love? How did you?
ლევანს როგორც შევატყე, ყველაზე მეტად კინოზე საუბარი სიამოვნებს. ბაშიაჩუკი კი დაამახსოვრდა, მამა რომ უჩვენებდა, მაგრამ დღეს უკვე ყველაფერი აინტერესებს, რაც ქართულ კინოს უკავშირდება. იმ დღეს, როცა ინტერვიუ ჩავწერეთ, რუსთაველზე მთაწმინდის პარკთან დამაკავშირებელი საბაგირო გზა იხსნებოდა. აკინს მოუყევი ოპერატორ ლევან პაატაშვილზე და სიკო დოლიძის ფილმზე დღე უკანასკნელი დღე პირველი. წარმავალ ნატურაზე, რომელიც კინომ შეგვინახა და რომელიც ნელ-ნელა ხელიდან გვეცლება. ლევანს გაახსენდა სახლი საბაგირო გზის სადგურთან, რომელიც განსაკუთრებით უყვარდა. თხოვა წამოდი კიდევ ერთხელ შევხედოთო. კინო კი არა მარტო ქალაქებს და სოფლებს ინახავს მომავალი თაობისთვის, არამედ ცხოვრების მოულოდნელობასაც. სწორედ ინტერვიუს გადაღების დროს შეგხვდა ამ სახლის პატრონი, ჩემი სტუდენტობის მეგობარი ნინო ყიფშიძე და შინ მიგვიპატიჟა. მხატვარ დათო სულაკაურისა და ხელოვნებაცოდნე ნინო ყიფშიძის ბინაც თბილისის ის ნაწილია, რომელიც ასე ძალიან უყვარს ლევან აკინს.
Incredible.
He works with encaustic fluids.
Okay.
დიდი ქალაქი მხოლოდ თანაგრძნობას, კეთილგანწყობას, სტუმართმოყვარეობას და მხარდაჭერას არ ნიშნავს. დიდ ქალაქში ზოგჯერ თავშესაფარს ეძებენ, გარბიან, როგორც ლევან აკინის ახალ ფილმში გზაჯვარედინი. მაგრამ სისასტიკეს მაინც ვერ გადაურჩებიან ხოლმე. ლევანი არ დასწრებია პირველ ჩვენებას, მაგრამ ის კი იცის რა მოხდა თბილისში პრემიერაზე, ქართულ შვედური ფილმისა და ჩვენ ვიცეკვებთ. ამ სკანდალის შემდეგ რატომღაც დარწმუნებული ვიყავი, რომ საქართველოში შეყვარებული შვედი თავის პირველ სამშობლოსთან ყველანაირ კონტაქტს გაწყვეტდა. მაგრამ არა. ახალ ფილმში გზაჯვარედინი, რომლის პრემიერას საქართველოს კინოთეატრებში ვინ იცის როდის ვეღირსებით, თავარი გმირები ისევ ქართველები არიან. პენსიაზე გასული აჭარელი მასწავლებელი ლია, მზია არაბული შესრულებით და მისი მფარველი ანგელოზი აჩი, ლუკა კანკავას დაუვიწყარი პერსონაჟი. თუ კი კინოხელოვნება რეალური სამყაროს შეცნობაში გვეხმარება, ფილმის ავტორსაც ისეთი გრძნობიარე მზერა უნდა ჰქონდეს, როგორც ლევან აკინს ამ ფილმში. დარწმუნებული ვარ, რომ ასეთ ავტორებს სიბნელე და უმეცრება არასდროს შეაშინებთ. ნუ რა უნდა კითხო, ეს არ არის კაი მოგონება შენთვის ეს ადგილი.
For me, no. I mean, I actually haven't been here since. I mean, I wasn't here when there were demonstrations either. I don't know. It's, you know.
მაგრამ ხო ნახე მე
Yeah, I saw it on like internet. Of course. Yes, I was worried. Of course, I didn't want anybody to get hurt over a film. I thought it was ridiculous. But yeah, it's.
ფილმის. არა.
You know what? Not well.
არ გინდა ეგეთი რეკლამა.
No, I don't. And also, I think that, you know, I really wanted the film to be able to be screened in Georgia. So when we weren't able to screen the film, it made me sad actually. And also, you know, I think that if they actually saw the film, I don't think that they would, you know, scream as much. When we made And Then We Dance, it was a very small film. We made it with very little resources. We got very little funding from the Swedish Film Institute. We got some private funding. But it was not like none of us expected the film to become this big thing that it became. It was just sort of me doing something for myself, basically. Because I also want to remind him that when in Sweden, I applied to the film university in Sweden, which in Stockholm, which is very hard to get into. I think they have like 500 applicants and they accept 4 people every second year. I applied twice in my early 20s and I never got in. I came close, but I was never accepted. So, you know, I worked for Roy Andersson a little instead, but in that sense, I also was kind of like an outsider. I'm always an outsider, but what I'm trying to say is like I was sort of just a working director who was making TV, you know, doing these things, and then We Danced, which was a personal movie, and then I sort of now, very late in my life, actually started sort of exploring cinematic possibilities as a director. It was never really something that I dreamed of or planned somehow, if that makes sense.
როიღებდი ამ ფილმს, არ ელოდი რომ შეიძლებოდა ასეთი რეაქცია ყოფილიყო. არ ელოდი. იმიტომ ხო ქონდა პრობლემები. ხო გითხრეს რომ ქართულ ცეკვაში არ არიან გეები.
კი, ვიცი, მაგრამ I never thought the film was going to be in Cannes or, you know, even if I made a movie about gay dancers or whatever, I thought, you know, maybe it will be in some small festival somewhere and then it will disappear. I didn't expect it to blow up like it did, actually. And I think none of us did. None of us involved in the film did expect that.
რამე მუქარა ხო არ ქონდა გადაღების დროს ან გადაღების უკვე დამთავრდა ფილმი ხო არ გწერდნენ არ ვიცი როგორ
Yeah, there was some stuff like that, but I'm not super familiar with the details about it, but I mean I was told by people that things were happening, but also looking back on those times, it's like I don't really know what was true, what's not true anymore. Everything is sort of you know, I was told that was happening, but I don't know. Not me personally.
ლევან, ამასობაში მიიღეს კანონი ცენზურაზე საქართველოში და შენი ფილმი არის მზად და რა ვიცი, ვერ ხვდები, ბევრმა არ იცის, არის თუ არა კანონის დარღვევა შენი ფილმის გზაჯვარედინის ჩვენება ეხლა, იმიტომ რომ
ჩემი
ახალი ფილმის და ანუ პრობლემა შეგიქმნეს ამ კანონით.
I don't know. I have no idea actually. I hope not. I mean, but you know,
ანუ ელოდები იმას რომ შეიძლება საერთოდ არ აჩვენონ ახლა.
შეიძლება. But I think it's part of a larger dynamic. I mean, of course I want people to see my film, but people can see it also online. They can download YouTube, whatever. But I think from a larger context, what's happening, not just in Georgia, but in the entire world right now, also in Sweden and in Europe, you know, in Austria also, they have a very far right-wing politicians that are in government. So I think we're living in sort of very precarious times, and I mean, it's sad. I think it's, you know, it's scary, and I think very much with Crossing, for me, was a film about, I think it was my thoughts about sort of solidarity, kindness, friendship, and I think films are in a way kind of like an empathy machine, because, you know, for me, film should be, that's how I like it. When you watch a film, you can live one day through another person, you know, you meet Jenna Rowlands in a Cassavetes film and you see what her life is like and you feel emotions through her, or you know, that's what for me film should be. That's it, and I don't think that should ever be censored. You know, I want to show Mzia Arabuli, who is this character. I mean, it's cinema is incredible in that way, where you can capture people, you can capture time, you can capture these women in Istanbul singing songs, these trans women in these apartments. I think that's incredible, you know, and that's, to me, that's what cinema is, and I think it's, you know, of course, very tragic if if somebody is going to decide this film is okay, this film is not okay. And I mean, art always finds its way. Look at Iranian cinema. I mean, Iranians have cinema in their blood. It's almost like a revolutionary act. So, they can try to quench art, but it's impossible. You can't. How do you, it's like when they're bombing Hamas. How do you kill an idea? You can't. You can kill everybody, but the idea is still going to be there. These children are still going to grow up and weaponize. You can't quench an idea. You can't silence an idea.
შენ თვითონ რამდენად ხარ საქმის კურსში რაც ხდება ახლა საქართველოში, ხო?
With the election, you mean? I mean, I think it's disgrace. I think it's disgraceful. I think I have so much. How can you say affection for Georgia on a deeper level? I mean, to me, it's also kind of like a love-hate relationships because at the same time, I always want. It's complicated. I don't know what to say other than I really want Georgia to succeed. There's so much potential in Georgia, artistically, in every sense of the world, politically. And to me, Georgia, is so much more than all of this bullshit that's happening. So. I really hope that the current regime is kicked out, of course.
მაგრამ როგორ თვლი რომ ეს რადგან ესე გიყვარს ქართული კულტურა, ეს ჰომოფობია გარედან არის მოხვეული თუ რეალურად
I think homophobia and patriarchy exists everywhere in the world, not just in Georgia. I mean, it's in everywhere.
Svedetshi.
Of course, 100%. I think it's hatred takes different forms and different shapes in different countries.
იმიტომ მკითხე ემიგრაციაზე და ემიგრანტებზე.
Of course. But I think in Georgia, as in Russia, as in also Turkey with Erdogan, they use the LGBTQ plus community as a political tool, to divide people, and it's just politics, and it's always different groups that fall victims of politics to keep people apart. It was Jews in the Second World War. Now it's very much Muslims, with Palestine and everything that's going on, and terrorism and blah blah blah. And of course, gay people, it's a very easy target to sort of weaponize against the West, right? So I mean, it's shameful. It's very shameful. I think very shameful.
მადლობა რომ ბოლომდე გვიყურეთ. ეს იყო გადაცემა შვილი, გადაცემა ჩვენს ძველ და ახალ თაობებზე. რას ფიქრობენ ჩვენი შვილები თავიანთ მშობლებზე, როგორ აფასებენ წარსულს და რას გეგმავენ მომავალში. უყურეთ რადიო თავისუფლების სხვა ვიდეოებსაც და რა თქმა უნდა გამოიწერეთ ჩვენი YouTube არხი.